Impossible for a plain yellow pumpkin to become a golden carrot. Impossible for a plain country bumpkin and a prince to join in marriage.
Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome to another Cinderella mini-series. This month we're looking at all three versions of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. Joining me for this series is Lisa Faye, and normally we would probably go with a release order for a series like this, but we decided since the 1997 one was the version we were most familiar with, we would start there, and then go back in time to the original from 1957, and then the first remake from 1965. So today, we're starting with the version I grew up with. I was 11 when the 1997 one was released, and I remember when it aired on TV. Back then, I taped a lot of movies that aired on The Wonderful World of Disney on VHS, so I watched this one more than the original 1950 Disney version. And at the time, I had no idea that this was a remake, let alone the third version of a musical from the 1950s. And even though I discovered that fact quite a while ago, I still hadn't seen the other two, so it will be very interesting to compare the three. Now before we get into the episode, I will say that we recorded this first version back in May, so we reference a few things that back then were in our future but are now in the past. Not important to the overall conversation, but I figured I'd mention it so there's no confusion. Okay, let's get into one of my favorite versions of Cinderella, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella from 1997 starring Whitney Houston and Brandy.
It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. It's possible. It's
Do you remember when this came out?
I do actually, because I was in college and I know other people were watching it, but I wasn't a big TV watcher back in college because I had other things going on. And so I do remember when it came out though. Yeah.
So when did you first see it then?
When my kids were small, because we were, of course, in the whole Disney world, like just anything and everything. And so I just, I was like, let's watch this Cinderella. And I think we only watched it a couple times. And then, I wish I was part of the crowd that was really into it when it happened, because when they had their reunion, it was so cute. And I know all the people that were super into it then just like absolutely just freaked out. And I was like, that's so cool. I can't claim to be one of them. So I don't want to put it out false pretenses here, but I was aware of it. Yes.
I don't know that I would call myself like a super fan of this one, but I watched it when it came out. Like, I remember being excited for it. I taped it when it was on The Wonderful World of Disney, so I had it on VHS, taped off the TV, and I rewatched it a bunch of times that way. This has always been one of my favorite versions of Cinderella, probably this and the movie Ever After. Do you know which one that one is?
Are we the same person? Yes. Because I'm exactly the same as you. These are my two favorite adaptations. Period. And it's hard because whenever I do watch a Cinderella, I compare it to Ever After, like that's the original story when I know it's not, but it seems like it should be. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember, I'm sure I watched the original Disney one when I was a kid, but it was never like a favorite. Like, I liked it well enough, but I didn't rewatch it a bunch. But with this one and Ever After, I watched it a bunch of times. And then later on, Ella Enchanted was another favorite, even though that's not like that's Cinderella, but it's with a twist,
right. Yeah.
But this one and Ever After are the two that I would say are the ones that I grew up with.
Well, I do love this one. I think it's very fun. And it's funny because the animated Cinderella, I had that in a little golden book with, with the gold side, you know what I mean? The children's book version.
Yeah.
And that Duke that would, walk around and let everybody try on the glass slipper. I don't know why, but as a kid, he freaked me out. I thought he was so scary looking. And so when I'd watch the animated version, I would just like freak out because I was like, he is so scary. And I don't know why, because now as an adult, I look at him like, what was I thinking? But as a kid, I was terrified of him.
Different kids have different triggers, I guess. Some
it's
kids
weird. I don't know why. Yeah.
Yeah, some kids get scared of the strangest stuff. That's hilarious.
I would like rush and like skip over those pages in the book. I remember being like, oh God, it's him, and just bypass that page.
Oh, that's great.
But luckily that didn't happen in this movie because I love everybody in this movie. And I forget, like, it's been quite a long time. Like, my kids are teenagers now, so it's been quite a long time since I've watched the Brandy, Whitney Houston one.
Hmm.
And I'd forgotten how many like big names were in this. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And then as soon as, like, the beginning credits are coming when they're telling you who's in it, and I'm like, oh my God, yes. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I forgot. And I was just like, yes. Like, I don't know why I didn't realize, because I was like, oh yeah, Jason Alexander, hello. Victor Garber, hello. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
remembered like Whoopi Goldberg and Bernadette Peters. I remembered those, but I just,
Yes.
when I was a teenager, I knew who Jason Alexander was, obviously, because of Seinfeld, but it wasn't like I was like, oh my God, look, there's Victor Garber.
Yeah, I don't think Victor Garber wouldn't have meant anything to me as a kid, but I like him now.
No, but yeah, so it was so fun. And I'm not going to lie, from the moment that Whitney Houston appeared on screen, I mean, I've loved her forever.
Hmm.
When I was younger and she was like very, very popular, I had her stuff on cassette, because that's how old I am. And like seeing her on screen, and as soon as she started singing, I literally like teared up. I was like, I was just like so caught up in it because she was so like incredibly like just talented, like otherworldly. And so
Hmm.
anytime she starts singing, I'm always like blown away. And it really like unlocked like a core memory of like being a kid and being like, oh my God, that's Whitney Houston.
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
perfect for the fairy godmother. Apparently, the original plan was for her to be Cinderella, but this movie was in production for so long that by the time they actually got around to making it, she felt like she was a bit too old. So she was like, "I'll be the fairy godmother. Let's find somebody else to do Cinderella." Because she's also a
Oh,
producer,
really?
so she's one of the people making this movie.
Yeah, I did know that. I did not know that she had originally planned to play Cinderella. That would make sense though, because I bet she would have been a kick-ass Cinderella.
She would have been great, yeah. But I do love Brandy as
But Brandy.
Cinderella. She's like I don't think I knew Brandy from it. Like I wasn't a like I liked Disney music when I was a kid. I didn't like a lot of regular pop music. So like I knew the name Whitney Houston, but I didn't know her music. I didn't know who Brandy was. But so this movie is how I know Whitney Houston and Brandy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't I mean, I knew Brandy, but I wasn't, a big fan at that point. By the time I reached college, we all go through these phases. I was super into like classic rock of like the 60s because I found my dad's old
Mm.
vinyl records, and he had a ton of like Creedence albums and like all that whole thing. And so I was super into that. And so I kind of turned my back to pop music for a while.
Yeah, I had a lot of weird phases of music too. My most weird phase was like European pop, like Europop, like the really bubblegum electric.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to
Like
much of that
what,
in years, but I that was a really strong phase for a while.
yes, we all have those hidden ones. I mean, I went through phases where I was like super into like Motown, and then, 60s, and
Hmm.
then at some point like hardcore like punk. It college it'll get you. Yeah. But yeah, I really really enjoyed this. Like I said, it'd been a number of years since I watched, and I remembered it being so like not really camp, because that's not really the right word, but just over the top, I guess, like in set design and
Yes.
like all the
And
colors
costumes.
and all of that. Just yes, just very outlandish, but it works. It works. It's not
Hmm.
corny. It works in the way that like the current, like if you think of today, like Descendants, like that whole Descendants franchise, it's so almost garish and like over the top, but it works. It's really fun. And I thought it worked for it was just fun. Everybody, actually brought it. Like they weren't phoning it in.
Hmm.
Some of these larger names, they weren't really phoning it in. I thought Whoopi Goldberg was hilarious with her little,
I love all her
with her,
squeaks.
yes, her high pitched squeaks. Like instead of answering, it was cracking me up. And it was a little shocking because I was like, oh yeah, Bernadette Peters plays a villain, and she's usually the goofy one, the comic relief. And so that was a little jarring, but it worked. Like I said, all of it I thought really worked really well. And I had a lot of fun with it. I was like, yes, This is what I remember.
Hmm. What did you think about the stepsisters?
Well, all I think I had forgotten that what is her name? Not Minerva. The
Calliope?
yes.
Calliope and Minerva are the two stepsisters.
Right. So the woman who plays Calliope, I every time I see her in anything, all I think about is her in You've Got Mail, where she's talking to Meg Ryan and she's like, this is sort of thing that nut of the Observer would write about. And she's like, what nut? And she's like, Frank something, and that's her boyfriend. Just the face that she makes when she's in that scene, and that's all I ever think about. So the whole time I'm like, that's her from You've Got and I couldn't stop thinking about that. But I thought they were funny and good stepsisters.
Yeah, that
Like,
was Vianne Cox as the one you're talking about, and
yes.
Natalie Desselle as Minerva,
Mm-hmm.
and they're
I thought they
great.
were great. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
Minerva is probably one of my favorite characters of the movie. She's just hilarious.
At the end, when when she's batting her eyelashes at him, trying to get him to like look at her, I was dying laughing. I was like, this it was cracking me up. So yeah, I thought they played the perfect mix of, bossy but also kind of dumb.
Yes.
So
For a lot of versions of Cinderella, that's kind of the go-to thing is having them be hilariously dumb, and they were
yes,
perfect.
absolutely. They were making me laugh each time. And then, every time that they try to outdo each other, oh, well, if you're doing this, then I'm doing it was cracking me up. I was like, yes.
I also love how they the way that they dress reminds me of the Mad Hatter.
Yes. Ooh, good call.
But just
Yes.
everything about them is just completely over the top ridiculous.
You're right.
And the mother too, to some extent, she's not quite as ridiculous as the stepsisters, but the first dress that the stepmother is wearing, it's like she's wearing a pair of pants under the dress, but she has both legs in one leg of the pants.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yes. I was trying to think of the other stepsisters from other versions, and the only ones right now I can think of is from Ever After. And of course, they were unintentionally funny. I thought they were funny, but not dumb. They were just very funny to me. But yeah, these two had a really good balance, and I enjoyed them a lot.
The ones that come to mind first are the two Disney versions, the original and the live action remakes, and they're kind of just idiots, but hilarious.
Yeah, I've only seen so far. I've seen the animated version. I've seen, of course, Ever After,
Mhm.
and like you said, Ella Enchanted, even though it's kind of a play on it. And then of course this one, and then the what is it, Lily James? That one,
Yeah,
is that her name? Lily James. That's the only other one I've ever seen.
yeah,
And
that's
honestly, I've only seen that once. I remember enjoying it, but I don't remember a whole lot about it.
I've seen it a couple times. I would say it's one of the better ones of the live action remakes, but that's not really a high bar to clear.
True.
I'm not even one of the people who hates the live action remakes, but they haven't had very many surefire winners, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're fun for what they are, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's been very hit or miss so far, mostly misses, but eh, to each their own. I am looking forward to Little Mermaid though.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one too. And the Peter Pan one, it's out, but I haven't watched it yet. The trailer looked actually good. I was shocked for Peter Pan and Wendy. We haven't mentioned the prince. We have Paolo Montalban, who I'm not really familiar with. This would probably be the only thing I've seen him in.
Same, and I feel like he came from the stage, and maybe he went back to the stage. I don't know for sure because I don't follow a lot of this story or this movie, but um I've seen the reunion pictures between him and Brandy, and they look exactly the same. I mean, of course, you can tell that they're older, but they look exactly the same, and they're both like gorgeous
Hmm.
people. And it's just, I'm like, holy cow, y'all look exactly the same. He was so cute too. Like he was that perfect blend of, charming, yes, of course, because he's supposed to be, but he could sing. And again, I thought no one phoned it in, and I thought he did a really good job, and very
Hmm.
swoony, very, smiley, but not corny, not cheesy.
He was a really good Prince Charming because a lot of times
Oh
it
my
can be
gosh,
hard to do
yes.
Prince Charming without being a ham. I
Yes.
don't know why, for some reason, the one that's coming to mind is the Shrek Prince Charming, but that's they're not all like that bad. But
Right.
but yeah, he was good.
Well, I always think, because I know that this was, Rodgers and Hammerstein. I understand that, but I always think, as growing up, the animated version where the prince is just basically like a background character.
He's
He's
just
only
there.
he's only there for like
His father is
five
more of a
minutes.
character than he is.
Yes, and he's like just some dark hair and like two like dark patches for eyes, and it's just very fuzzy. And
Hmm.
so I like it when we get a lot more of, in these other versions, where you get a lot more of his family, and you get to see all the behind the scenes and how they're just like desperate for him to get married. And I think, how old is he? Y'all need to just don't worry about it. He's got time. All these kids have time. All these kids are like teenagers in the story. Just relax.
I'm trying to remember exactly the line that I mean, unless I'm thinking of Sleeping Beauty, something about what year it is, but like the not getting any younger or something. I don't remember what the
Oh,
line is exactly. But yeah, the back then, like in real life, I suppose it would have been much more of a worry.
yeah. Now I'm like, you're fine.
Yeah.
With all the streaming services and like Uber Eats, nobody needs to get married ever. I'm like, who needs that?
Well, I suppose we can get into the story of the movie itself.
Sure.
The main story really gets going after there's like a whole montage at the beginning. Starts with fairy godmother popping up and singing the first bit of Impossible, and then you get like a view of the town and kind of an introduction to the characters. And then you have the prince and Cinderella meeting in the marketplace. And I think I always kind of compared this to Aladdin because it was kind of the same situation where the prince is pulling a Jasmine, pretending to be a commoner just to get out of the palace.
Right. Exactly.
I think the song that is in this scene is The Sweetest Sounds, and that one's a really iconic one. And it's kind of an accidental duet with them because they're both singing the same song but in different parts of the town.
Right. I just love Brandy. Like, I love how, I don't know if this is the right word, but how soft she, is in this
Mm,
role,
yeah.
and like her voice and just her look and just how sweet she is, and how like immediately they're just like drawn to each other. So I love the beginning of this
Hmm.
when they first meet.
Yeah. And I like that they actually meet instead of just like love at first sight at the palace and then they're going to get married. I like that they have them meet earlier than that.
Right.
And you can tell they actually like each other because they actually have a moment to sort of talk to each other here.
Yeah. And then we get to see the whole part where, he goes home and obviously he's changing. And so now we realize, he's not just a dude in the market. He's,
Hmm.
a prince. I like that little scene when he's in there and he's getting dressed again. And I think that's when we first meet Jason Alexander, who's doing a
Yes.
terrible accent. I don't know why he's doing that accent. It's just, it's not necessary. No one else is.
I was just gonna
Not
say
really.
he really doesn't need to because nobody else is doing any sort of an unnatural accent, just him. Maybe they
It,
thought it'd be funny.
yeah. I didn't think it was funny, but I'm like, Jason Alexander is funny on his own, just being himself. You don't need to throw an extra shtick on it. Like, you don't need to like layer it or anything. He can just be himself.
Yeah. And I also love the scene with him and his parents. And like I said, his mother's squeaks when he doesn't want the ball to be thrown in his honor to meet a woman.
Yeah. And
Just the little
the way
noises
she
she
just,
makes.
oh my gosh. And the way she like looks at her husband like, hello. And he's like, oh, yeah. What?
And this is probably not iconic to anyone but me, but when she says, Max, my smelling salts.
And he totally ignores her. Yes.
And this eventually leads to The Prince is Giving a Ball, which is another iconic song. I think that I can't remember which ones, but there are some songs that were written for this version, but this is not one of them because this is in older versions too. I haven't fully watched the other two yet, but I know this is in at least one of the other versions, and it's a really good song. I love the when they were reciting the names, like they have so many names.
Yes. So I don't think I've actually seen one of the actual musical, like the Rodgers Hammerstein, like the original. I don't think I've ever actually seen one with the songs like that. So all of, watching this originally and then of course on the rewatch, I didn't know, like, I don't know like the songs like that. So I'm guessing that some of them are added in. I just don't know which ones. So it's going to be interesting to watch the other ones and be like, oh yeah, there's that song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of them. Like I feel like I'm going to end up being biased and just say this one is the best one because it's the one I grew up with. But it'll be
Well,
interesting to
yeah, and
see
it's
if
got
any of the
Whitney
ones in
Houston.
the other one like turn out to be like super amazing. If either of them do, I feel like the one with Julie Andrews has the most potential, but we'll see.
Right.
I have a feeling I'm going to be
Well,
biased in
yeah.
this one's favorite when we're done with going through all these.
Agreed, because like I said, it's Whitney Houston. You can't
Yeah.
go wrong. There she is at the end, just belting it out, and I'm just like sitting on the couch, like my eyes are watering because I'm like, Whitney. I was like devastated when she died. So yeah, seeing her again, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like bringing up like deep childhood memories here.
Yeah, she's great. Then you also go and see Cinderella's home life. They get home and she's basically getting berated for not doing the chores, even though they made her go shopping with them,
Right.
which leads to In My Own Little Corner, which is another iconic song. And I'm not going to say all the songs are iconic because there's only a few, like at the very beginning, there's like, oh yeah, I remember this one. I remember this one. I remember this one. There's some later that I was like, oh, I forgot about that song. But this one I feel like is one of the iconic ones from this movie.
Right. And this scene I love so much because I remember watching it the first time and being obsessed with her little bed, like in the corner, and then like that fireplace, and then like the chair, because obviously that's where she like sleeps and basically lives. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that is so cute. Like I would want to live there. And just, forgotten about it. And so when I was watching it again, I'm like, oh, that's right. There's her little bed in the corner. And I'm like, oh, it's so cute. I just want that for like a little reading nook or something.
I don't know why I thought about this, but like the whole point of this song is she's imagining a better life and imagining herself in all these different scenarios of all these things that she could be if she weren't here. And one of the things that she imagines is that she's a mermaid. And it suddenly flashed in my head. I was like, Brandy should play the mother in the new Little Mermaid movie.
Oh my God.
She looks a little bit like Halle Bailey. I think she could be a perfect mermaid mother.
Oh my gosh. I did notice that too. Because of all of the Little Mermaid hype, that when she was like, when she said that in the song, I'm like, oh, Little Mermaid. Yes.
Yes. We had the same thought apparently.
Yes, because I'm super excited for it. And so, yeah, that was one of the things that jumped out at me on this rewatch. I'm like, oh, she could have been the Little Mermaid.
After this, you go back to the prince at the palace, and there's a scene between him and Lionel as the prince is still upset that the ball was happening. And Lionel says, I probably should not interfere. Probably.
And they keep knocking him off that ladder. It's cracking me up.
And Lionel suggests that they go through with everything to please the parents, but to please the prince, he says if he doesn't actually find love, then they should let him find his own love his own way. And then you get more squeaks out of the queen.
Oh my gosh. It was like perfect timing each time she did it.
I don't know why. That just cracked me up so much. Every squeak. It was just great.
I loved it. I'm like, I need to know who was behind that because it was perfect.
Then you get I'm assuming that a lot of this movie happens in montage because I really don't have any idea how much time is passing between scenes because you have the scene of the stepsisters getting ready, even though it seems like they just found out that this is happening and now the ball is like actually happening now. So I'm assuming this is
Right.
like several days later, but it feels like it's just a couple hours later.
Yes. It just goes one next to it, which I appreciate. I'm like, move it along. We don't need to draw this out. I mean, it's a pretty we all know the story. So
And it's a musical, so the music can hide the passage of time within a montage.
right. Yes.
And you get a scene here that I think this is where like I know it's a trope that like corsets are so painful, and I know that's in some cases they can actually alleviate pain, but I think this is one of the scenes that as a kid I just assumed that corsets were a form of torture because of the mother trying to get Minerva into this corset.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I there's no way. Like I think about I'm like I think like could I have done no. Like I don't even like jeans. And those are just jeans. Like I don't like anything like that. I need all my pants to be elasticated. I can't imagine having to wear like a corset or stay anything like that. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I would get too hot.
Ugh, for real.
And you get some stuff here with the stepsisters. Minerva is permanently itchy when she's nervous. She also likes to recite poetry and wants to recite poetry to the prince. And Calliope just wants to charm him with infectious laughter, which is just a series of snorts.
Oh my gosh. And I know we're gonna get to it, but when it comes to that part and he's like, are you okay?
And then, of course, the line, we hide our flaws until after the wedding.
Best line of the whole movie.
And Cinderella thinks that they should show the prince who they really are, and then tells them what her ideal meeting of the prince would be, complete with hand kissing. The stepsisters love it, but the stepmother thinks it's rubbish, which leads to the song Falling in Love with Love. And this is where I think the most of the montage is happening is through this song. I have no idea how much time is passing.
Right. It's kind of a blur.
But they leave for the ball at the end of all of this.
And that's when it's gonna happen. We're gonna meet Whitney Houston.
Yes, you get a reprise of In My Own Little Corner. She's imagining herself at the party. And I love the line in the reprise, the color on my two stepsisters' faces is a queer sort of sour apple green.
Yes.
And of course, she wishes to go to the ball, and the fairy godmother appears. And I like her line, if you want to get out of here, you're going to have to do it yourself. I like that they emphasize that because a lot of people say that Cinderella is extremely passive, which I can see how they would get that idea. But if you're really paying attention to most versions, she does try to do things for herself. But I like that they really emphasize that in this version, like having to go out and be proactive in getting yourself out of this situation.
Right. Agreed. I did like that. And I did notice that because that's one of the reasons why I like Ever After so much is, she busts herself out.
Yes.
She's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm here to save you. She's like, great. So I did notice it in this version and I do appreciate it. I'm like, yes, I'm with you.
And this is where you get probably my favorite song of the whole movie, Impossible, Whitney Houston, of course.
Yes.
And you get turning the pumpkin into a carriage and the mice into horses and coachmen. It's one of those things where you can tell this was CGI in the 90s on a TV budget, but I think they did it well enough that it has aged better than other similar CGI of the time. I think that it's one of the much better examples of this kind of thing.
It's funny you say that because I was actually thinking about that when I was watching it because normally stuff like this, it's easy to poke fun at and it's easy to joke about because you're like, oh my gosh, look at how ridiculous this looks now. But I didn't mind it at all. And I was just like, oh, this is so charming because it's just a memory of the time, and I still think it works. I thought it was very cute. I was like, oh, look at this. Like all of her that, and especially at the end. Well, I know we're gonna get there, but especially at the end when she's floating, she's floating above the castle. I mean,
I think a lot of this is helped by the fact that the fairy godmother's magic has this
mm-hmm,
specific kind of sparkle to it. And I think that sparkle
mm-hmm,
can really hide any flaws that are in the special effects, whether it's having her be partially visible or having the pumpkin turn into a carriage. I think those sparkles both look cool but hide flaws. And I think that's why
right.
this has aged better than other examples from the time.
Yeah, I liked it. And I feel like there was a scene maybe around this time when she's leaving, like she's either going to the ball or coming back, when they show the town because it's dark and quiet because I guess everyone's at the ball. And I'm like, is that a matte painting in the back? I'm like,
It
okay, I
probably
like it.
was, but
Yeah,
didn't
I
care.
like it because I mean, that's how you did it,
Hmm.
way back in the day. And I was like, look at that. You don't see those anymore. So I was like, oh, look, a matte painting.
I kind of wish that you would see more of them because I feel like, I don't know, matte paintings just make things look better than trying to build everything in CGI. Like even the
It is a
best,
lost art. Yes,
yeah, even the best CGI, at times you can still tell. And I just like matte paintings.
I do too.
Like even a lot of the original Star Wars was matte paintings in the background, and they still look great.
Yes,
If you get a good
I
enough
think so
artist, you
too.
can really do something amazing.
My husband and I always trying to point him out. Matte painting.
And then, of course, you get the time limit. She says, I don't make the rules. The magic only lasts until midnight. But then I was thinking, well, who does make the rules? It's not
Right?
explained.
It never is. It's like, well, the script says so, so I guess we have to.
Yes. And then the song changes from impossible to it's possible, which of the songs, I think this is my favorite version of the impossible song, especially the line, impossible things are happening every day. There's just something about the way she sings that. It's just great.
Yeah, I love her.
Then to the dance, you have an extremely boring, very choreographed dance.
Yeah.
It's very slow and dull, but I loved that everyone is like so bored and Minerva just screams, "I want a chance at him."
I know. Because everybody, I mean, I get why they did it, but everybody's dressed basically in the same shade. And of course, then,
Uh-huh.
it makes Brandy stick out more, but then, of course, the
The
stepsisters are
stepsisters really stand out.
in these. Yes. And so I get why they did it. But yeah, it's just, it's this very dark purple that most people are wearing. And so, yes, it's nobody's smiling.
Mhm.
Everybody's just kind of going through the motions. And so I know that it's to set up, the whole like, hey, look at Brandy comes in, everything turns, lively. But yeah, it's boring.
Yeah, you have the king and queen trying to figure out whether their son is smiling or wincing.
Victor Garber, that's a wince.
That you also get a scene with the stepmother trying to get Lionel to give her daughters a chance at the prince by trying to weirdly flirt with him, and the line that he has a wonderful head full of skin.
It did get me. I did laugh
I,
pretty loud at that
I
one.
love the other exchange when he replies, I honestly wish there was something between us. Really? Yes, a continent.
Yeah, I'm like, you could have done all that without that goofy accent and it would have been much better.
And of course, the stepsisters do eventually get their chance. You have Calliope snorting uncontrollably, and Minerva furiously scratching her butt and trying to recite
Oh
her
my
line,
gosh.
ships that pass in the night and speak to each other in passing on the ocean of life. It's poetry!
It was so well timed. I loved it.
And then I had never realized how little time Cinderella had at the ball because she arrives at 11:15. So she only really
Mm-hmm.
gets 45 minutes there. And the fairy godmother tells you that she got her this far, the rest comes from you. And I love how when she goes in, everything is like dead silent. I thought that was great that
Mm-hmm.
they didn't put any music over that. It's just silent. I love a good silent moment in a movie.
Agreed.
So she and the prince dance while everyone is watching, much faster and more graceful than the stiff dance from earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Various people think that they know her, but they can't figure out why they know her. And the stepmother is very suspicious at this point. And then you have the song 10 Minutes Ago I Met You, which is one of the ones that I'd forgotten about. But I was like, this really just sounds like a Disney song.
Yeah, it reminded me of Frozen when they meet and within like a song they're like engaged and she's like, you can't marry someone you just met. He's
I
like, of
didn't
course you
think of it
can.
that way, but yeah, kind of. Then you end up in a huge ballroom dance scene. This part of the movie kind of lost me. I was kind of bored and checking out at this moment. I ended up like I never do this, but for some reason at this moment I was so bored I started fan casting a remake. like,
Oh my gosh.
like this is the third remake of this movie, so I was like, well, they'll probably eventually make another one. Who would they get?
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious.
The thing that I kept coming back to is the stepsisters. I don't know why, but like they reminded me of, did you watch the sequel to Disenchanted last year? The Amy Adams movie?
No, I haven't, but I
The
probably should because I liked Enchanted.
the characters, the main villain and the two, I want to call them the stepsisters because that's who they reminded me of, but they're not stepsisters. It was kind of like her henchmen, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
The two that kept coming back to my head as characters that should be in a remake was Yvette Nicole Brown and Jama Mays as the stepsisters.
Yes.
Because their characters
Ooh.
in Disenchanted just seemed similar enough to these two. It was like that would be perfect.
Okay, well now I have to watch so I can see.
And then also Maya Rudolph was the main villain. I was like, she would make a good stepmother.
Oh, she would. Ooh, that's a good one.
And then I was also thinking, well, does that mean that Amy Adams and Patrick Dempsey should be the prince and Cinderella? But I was like, I don't know. They're a little bit too old. Better think of somebody else. And I never settled on anybody. So I just mainly, I was just mainly thinking of the step family.
Yeah, because those are the most fun to try
Yes.
and figure out who could be like both evil and yet also a little dumb
Yeah.
in some cases.
Oh, I just had an idea. At least for Cinderella, I hadn't
Okay.
thought of China Anne McClain. She's like a Disney star. She was on a show called Ant Farm. I know she was in one of those Descendants movies, but I haven't seen those. I think she played like an
Mm.
Ursula relation. You know the
Oh,
person I'm
okay. Yeah, I
talking
know who you're
about?
talking about. Yes.
She could be a good
Yes.
Cinderella.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I did like her. If it's the woman I'm thinking about, yes.
She's one of those that, like, I can't think of her name right now, but she was the youngest girl on the show Jessie. Because there was a period of time, like when I was in my early 20s, me and my cousin would just watch Disney Channel shows because we just wanted just to watch something silly and fun. So we just watched a whole bunch of
Right.
Disney Channel shows that we were completely not the age group of. But the show Jessie, the youngest girl on there, she was like 8 and she's an adult now, and I'm like, what happened?
Oh, yeah, trust me. Every time I turn around, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I am older.
I think that was the first
Yes.
person that I really noticed, like, go from a child star when I was an adult to an adult when I was an adult that was like, oh no.
Oh yeah, it's so shocking too because you're just like, what? How's that possible? Because I still like anytime somebody's like 1990, I'm like, yeah, that was like 10 years ago. And the other day, like not the other day, but like it wasn't too long ago that my kids were like, did you know, Mom, that like the 90s were like 30 years ago? And I was like,
I don't want to hear
that's
that.
the
The
meanest,
70s was
it's
30
like that's
years
the
ago.
meanest thing you've ever said to me. Period. Yeah. I'm like, thanks. It's just so shocking when you realize that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Anyways, where were we?
Oh, the dance, because yes, because you got bored with the dance, you started fan casting. But that's when they like end up dancing, and all of a sudden the scene changes when they've danced outside, and it's just
Hmm.
them two together, the prince and Cinderella together, and they're like having their little moment. But then the stepsisters are in the bushes being like,
Oh
and that leads
yes.
into that song, like, why does he want a plain girl like her?
Yeah, I love the line. I don't remember what the song is called, but why would a fellow want a girl like her? The way they sang that, that was one of those things like, oh yeah, I remember that from when I was a kid. The just the I don't know, the cadence of their voices. Why would a fellow want a girl like her?
Yes. Like they were hiding in the bushes and it was making me laugh because all of a sudden, like they were having this moment and all of a sudden they just pop up and they're just there and then they start singing. And I loved it.
You also get a scene in here where the king and queen are like trading dancing with Cinderella and the prince, and she kind of freaks out when she realizes that she's not who they think that she is, and she runs to find her fairy godmother and wants her to take her back home, but she basically gives her a pep talk like, you don't want to quit now. And then the
Right.
prince finds her, and the fairy godmother disappears, and they have a conversation which turns into a song. Do I love you because you are beautiful, or are you beautiful because I love you? And then that song I kind of forgot about, but there's a line in there that I definitely remembered. Are you the sweet invention of a lover's dream, or are you really as wonderful as you seem? That song, that part of
Yeah.
the song was like, oh yeah, I remember this.
I know. I liked it. I liked it. I thought it was very sweet. I liked the I liked when they flipped back and forth. I did like that song. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the actual songs, and so I was like, I like this one.
Yeah. And by the end of this one, you can tell that they're super in love, but of course, as it is wont to do, the clock begins striking and she runs. And I kind of liked that she's in rags before she's like fully out of the castle. She's like running down the stairs and she's back to her rags. She doesn't even
Same.
make it away. I liked that.
Yep.
And I liked that that song kind of kept going after she's left. They're still singing to and about each other. And then he
I
finds the
know.
glass slipper. And then there was a scene here. She's like running through the town, and you can see the castle behind her at the top of the mountain. I was like, how far and how long was she running?
Okay, that's it. That's where I saw the matte painting. Now that you say that, I'm like, yes, because I had the same thought. I was like, she ran all the way that by foot, but then like what? Because she took that carriage there, so I'm like, so that was far, and then she came all the way back, and no one noticed her. Okay, whatever. But that's when that matte painting was, because I remember thinking that, like, oh, and there's a matte painting.
Maybe this part of it's like 3 a.m. She's been running for 3 hours.
I mean, yeah. I mean, sometimes when you leave a party, you just got to get home, and you're like, I'll do whatever I have to do to get home. Of
And by the time she gets home, her family is getting home, and her stepsisters are exaggerating their experience with the prince.
course.
It's saying how they danced with about an hour with him. And well, if you did, then I did too.
Oh my gosh, they cracking me up. They're so goofy.
And then Cinderella describes what she imagines the ball was like. And then you get the song Lovely Night. And during this scene, the stepmother figures out what's going on. And this is where you get like Bernadette Peters going pure evil.
Mm-hmm.
And up until this point, the
Yes.
step family mostly was just kind of goofy, but she's awful in this scene. I still kind of like the
Yes.
stepsisters. I think they're potentially redeemable, but stepmother is not really after this.
No, because I think the stepsisters are just clueless. Like they've
Yeah.
just been raised clueless and they don't understand how kind of awful they treat people because they're like, what? But
Hmm.
yeah, the mom is just very plotting and conniving. Yes.
Hmm. She basically gives her a pile of chores and tells her she'll never be anything more than common, and the thought of the prince with her is laughable. So Cinderella ends up outside crying, and basically, it's she's talking to her father, who is not there. Her father has passed away years in the past, and telling him that she knows she promised to stay with her family, but she's changed and she deserves to be loved, and she figured that out tonight, and she's leaving.
I know. I love that part. It's so sad. I was like so heartbroken for her. And I know that it's all going to end well. Like I know what happens, but I'm still like in that moment. I was just like, it's going to be okay.
Hmm. And then after this, you get a scene with the prince and Lionel. The prince gives Lionel the glass slipper and says they're going to try it on every girl in the kingdom until they find her. And then you get a feet montage.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I'm just like somebody who's super into feet. This is probably like their favorite scene in the movie because it's kind of
I had the same thought. I know, like, I don't know how true it is, but people always talk about Quentin Tarantino having a feet thing. Like, I haven't actually
yeah.
seen any of his movies, but I was like, if that's true, then he would love this movie.
Oh my gosh. And I'm like, ooh, I bet some people were like, I need a stocking. I can't be one of these barefoot people because it was just like randomly like some barefoot people. And I just thought,
I
how
think there was also
awful.
a man foot in there.
And at the end, right?
Yes.
It did look like that was a very, very muscular, hairy leg, which to each their own. I'm like, yes, you go after it, man. I don't discriminate here. If you want the prince, go for it. But it did take me a minute because I'm like, is that what I saw? But some of the footage, like I don't know how your copy was because I watched it on Disney Plus,
Yeah, I
but
did
it
too.
seemed to just kind of maybe it was just my internet connection was bad, but there were a couple of times when it just all of a sudden didn't look great, like in focus. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's just my
The
internet
copy,
connection in
there
the
have been people complaining about this. The copy on Disney Plus it seems to be just the standard non-high definition version. I don't even know if there is a high def version, but there's
right.
got to be somewhere in a vault somewhere. Somebody had, I don't, unless they didn't film on film. I don't know if they had digital filming back then or not, but you would think that they would. But whatever's on Disney
Right.
Plus does not seem to be the highest quality. So I know what you're talking about.
No.
Yes, it's not the
Yeah. And so that's
greatest.
why I was like, did I see what I saw? And then my next thought was, okay, I remember in the little golden book, because I always used to skip over that page because he freaked me out. The Duke freaked me out. He's there like by himself, like taking the shoe around, the countryside trying to like find for the prince. So basically it's like, okay, you super love her, but you're not going to go out and actually find her. You're going to assign that to somebody else and make him go around and look for her while you sit at the castle. And so in this version, he's with him
Hmm.
going around trying these, we get that montage of all these feet. And I'm thinking, you need a shoe to recognize her? Why don't you look at their
That's
faces?
one thing that I've always thought does not make sense about the story of Cinderella. I
I'm
think
like,
people just include it because it's tradition to have the shoe fitting scene, but it
yes.
really does not make sense. The prince should be able to tell.
Yeah, like, oh, it's you by your face, not because this shoe fits your foot. It really was blatant this time because he was there watching, and I'm like, and he keeps looking down, like the whole time he keeps looking down at all the feet, and I'm like, you don't notice that that's not her? Like, that's not her at all.
Yeah, eventually he gets to Cinderella's house, and then you get the scene with the stepmother trying to lock Cinderella away. But I don't think Cinderella even really cares at this point because she's intent on leaving. So it doesn't do any
Right.
good to lock the kitchen because she's gone or trying to get out anyway. I think she goes out a window to actually leave, not find the prince. And the mother wants to try it on too. And it seems to fit until it cuts off her circulation.
Oh my gosh, which was so funny. And the thing is I'm like, you gave up too early because if I was trying to hide somebody, I wouldn't be like, I mean, I know that's the whole point is they're goofy and dumb and they're like, what? Nobody's back here behind this door. There's no door.
The little
What are you
shuffle
talking
thing where
about?
they tried to hide the
Yeah, like,
door.
and there's Minerva with her hand up, like trying to hide the door behind her arm. And like, no, but of course, well, what's back there? Nothing. Okay. So it was a little convoluted, but you know what? I love it because that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be slightly goofy, and I
Hmm.
was into it.
It's one of those things. I think I've talked about this in other episodes for other movies. It's fairy tale logic, so I just go with it.
Right. Right.
But I also loved after this when the stepmother's begging him just to take one of her daughters, and then they're trying to impress him. I loved
I know.
Minerva flexing when she's called strong as an ox.
I know. And then she's batting her eyelashes at him at the same time. Just very, very it was cracking me up.
And then, of course, he goes outside, and you get kind of a repeat of their first meeting with her almost run over by a carriage. And
It
she
was so
reintroduces
cute.
herself and then tries on the shoe. And then, of course, no,
I know.
from the stepmother.
I love it. Okay, I take it back. My favorite line is actually at the beginning when she tells him her name, and he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Well, because I sit by the, she tells him the whole thing. I sit by the fire and I get it." He's like, "Oh, I like that." And she says, "You know, it grows on you, doesn't it?" And I was like, "Oh, that's the cutest thing ever." And so when they say it again at the end, I was like, shrieking because I loved it.
Yeah, that was great. And then, of course, they kiss, and the fairy godmother appears, and they get a song from Whitney Houston as they're getting ready and getting married and leaving together. And
Mm,
I loved
perfect.
even though it's kind of a dated special effect, I just love her flying above the castle, even though it's basically just her torso and a bunch of sparkles.
Me too. I loved it. I
Yeah,
loved it.
yeah. Whitney Houston has got to be my favorite fairy godmother of any movie that I've seen. She's just great.
Seriously. Ugh, I loved it.
Yeah, she's perfect. I don't know who plays the fairy godmothers in the other versions. It'll be interesting to see how they compare. I don't think they'll be as good unless there's like some
No.
shockingly amazing person that I've never heard of. I can't imagine they'll beat Whitney Houston.
No.
But yeah, I was going to call it the original, but no, it's not the original. It's like I said, this is the
We can
third
call it
version
the
of this
original.
movie, but it's the original to me. The other ones,
Exactly.
the earlier ones are almost going to feel like the remakes rather than this one.
I'm with you. It's gonna be like, when you grow up, well, it's not gonna be like that because this is kind of backwards, but you watch, the original Star Wars, and then they had the, other episodes come out, which we don't talk about those in this house. And so then when you try and watch them in order, it goes from like, better technology back to the, original, but we still, it's whatever you want it to be, whatever you want the first one to be. And this
Mhm.
could be the first one for us. We could just be like,
Yeah.
yes, this is the original. We don't need
That's why I
this
wanted to
and ever
start this
after.
series with this one because I knew
Yes.
that once we get to the other ones, I'm just going to be comparing it to this one. So I was like, even though normally I like to start with the original and then move on to the remakes, I was like, we just need to do this one first because this is the one I grew up with.
Hmm.
Because I know when we do the other ones, they're just going to get compared to this one. So we might as well do this one first.
I think that was an excellent idea because I agree with you. And I think it was like I said at the beginning, where watching this, I kept comparing it to Ever After, even though that's, it complements it. You know what I mean? And so I had to be like, no, this is not you have to go back to the, like, it's a musical. It's not, it's not Drew Barrymore
Yeah.
being, cute in a field. So we can call this the original. We can do whatever we want. You can
Yes.
do whatever you want. It's your podcast. You do whatever you want.
Okay, well, I think this will probably be a good place to end this episode, but we will be back next week with another one talking about what is actually the original one. It'll be weird to see what it's like, but I'm sure it'll be good. It's Julie Andrews, so it's got to be good in its own way.
It does, because you're right. Julie Andrews, I mean, come on. And I'm very much looking forward to it because even though, yes, I am going to compare it, I'm excited to see the true OG and compare
Hmm.
it. I am excited. So
Yeah.
it'll be fun.
Well, until then, do you want to let people know where they can find you if they want more from you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for asking me because this has been a delight. I mean, it's been honestly years and years since I've even thought, oh, no, okay, you know what? I lied because I watch Ever After all the time. But like when it comes down to like the actual like Cinderella story, it's been years. And so to dive back into this has been like super fun. And so thank you for asking me and thank you for letting me join you. And yes, I actually have I mean, it's not new, but I'm back on it again. It's called Which Was Better, where I compare books and their movie adaptations. And so you can find me on Instagram at Which Was Better. That's pretty much the only place I'm at now.
Well, if somebody likes my Every Version Ever podcast, then they might enjoy that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, we will talk to you next time.
Thank you and bye.
Thanks for listening to the Disney Movie Marathon. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform or to our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow my co-hosts as well, and if you want more content from us, check out one of the other podcasts in the iHeart Movies Podcast Network, or check out my brand new Patreon. My link tree, as well as any other relevant links, will be in the description. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.